It's just after Christmas 1946. The star of Cairo's crew have spent the festivities 3,000 miles from home in the City of Light, Paris. The weather is cold, very cold, but dry and invigorating at the same time. Things are coming back to normal in Paris. Cafes are open, restaurants plying their trade, the city is shining again, and the TWA crew are really enjoying themselves. Several miles from the city centre at Orly Airport, Star of Cairo awaits its crew for its westbound flight. A crew of maintenance men are working on a logged fault in the altimeter. The Star's flight westward is due out at approximately midnight. A Paris taxi is called and the crew are soon making their way to the airport, a mere 13 kilometers south of Paris. The Star was the very best constellation available in 1946. In July of the same year, it was upgraded with new engine exhausts and electrical systems. The Star was the first TWA constellation to land at Shannon and even set an eastbound speed record, 6 hours and 55 minutes from Gander. It's almost midnight and TWA flight 6863 starts boarding. Her passengers met at the rear door by a smiling 22-year-old Vina Ferguson and her colleague, steward John Logan. Flight time to Shannon that night was just under 2 hours. On Captain Tanzi's command, co-pilot Cliff Sparrow advances the throttles. The R2800 engines are now clawing their way through the frigid air, and within minutes the Star of Cairo is making its way westward into the night. Next stop, Shannon, and more passengers to take on board. By 1:30 a.m, at 7,000 feet and dropping, the Star is over the southeast Irish coast, preparing for a Shannon landing at approximately 2 a.m. On board, Vina and John are clearing up and prepping for that landing. Everything is just so routine. The Star of Cairo is cleared to land on runway 14. Conditions a little cloudy but calm. In the cockpit, all is apparently normal, but unknown to the crew, the altimeter is putting them 500 feet higher than their actual altitude. A technician back in Paris has inadvertently reversed the two static line inputs on the altimeter. In executing a slight left-hand turn, the port wing tip and propeller impact the ground. Her fate is sealed. Inish Macnaughton, an island on the Fergus estuary, is to be the Star's grave. Vina Ferguson's account was of a bump, and then she passed out as the impact deepened at 150 miles per hour. When she came to, she was sitting in the tail section with purser and colleague John Logan and VIP passenger David Tannenbaum. The gravity of what has happened is soon apparent to Ferguson and Logan, who unfasten their seatbelts. They jump out and soon find themselves up to their knees in the marsh. Captain Tanzi is thrown clear. He awakes in agony and realizes that his leg is gravely injured. The entire site is lit up in an inferno, and screams of passengers fill the empty night. At the airport, the flash is seen, and moments later the ear-splitting noise of the impact. Rescue is mounted, but it'll be 2 hours before it arrives. There is no causeway linking the island, and fishermen's boats have to be commandeered. Dr. James O'Boyle and Jerry Gallivan are the first to arrive at the devastating scene. Gallivan donated blood to the gravely injured Tanzi. Charles Hennigan recalls the heroic work of Vina Ferguson and Logan. Liquor is found, a fire is lit, and the survivors huddle in the darkness. The scene in front of the survivors is one of total carnage. The Star has broken into several parts, fires have erupted, and the heat is intense. The air carries the screams of those still alive but gravely injured. The trio of Ferguson, Logan and Tannenbaum brave the heat and pull anyone still strapped in to some degree of safety. The cries of a child can be heard somewhere in the dark. It is Charles Dellaby, who has been thrown yards from his mother Edith, a GI war bride. Ferguson brings the child to his mother and has the presence of mind to light a fire in the distance, break open some brandy taken from the rear of the wreckage and gather the survivors around it. At the airport, the fireball is first seen, and then moments later the sound is felt as much as it is seen. They piece together the rough location of the crash, but don't yet realise that they will have to traverse a 300-foot wide body of water separating the island from the mainland. A party from the airport is soon on its way to the vicinity. These include John Joe McInerney, Paddy Casey, Jerry Donlan, Billy Earls, Peter Doyle, Jerry Gallivan. The heroic work of the rescue party continues on into the early hours of the morning. Eventually, a fleet of ambulances arrives. The survivors are brought to hospitals in Limerick and in Ennis. Without a doubt, the most high-profile passenger on the flight that night was a gentleman by the name of Pierre Dreyfus. Dreyfus was returning to visit his son in New York. Pierre Dreyfus, being the son of Alfred Dreyfus, was the keeper of his father's archives. Alfred Dreyfus was removed from the very high positions within the French military in the 1890s on anti-Semitic grounds. The French government and military eventually gave him a pardon, but it wasn't after 5 years spent in incarceration on Devil's Island in Tasmania. On the 30th of December, a high-powered team from Lockheed arrive at the crash site. Very soon they get to the cause of the accident and discover that it is in fact the reversal of input lines in the altimeter, thus exonerating Captain Tansey and his crew. On recovering from his injuries, Captain Tansey once again moves back to the United States. He is given a desk job by TWA Airlines, but also goes on to bring a case against the airline, winning the then record payout in American legal history. After a number of years and seeping boredom, Tansey once again wants to make a return to the aviation business. He moves his wife and family 3,000 miles to Southern California to take up duties as a flight instructor at a flight school. While on a flight with a student, Tansey suffers a heart attack. Student panics and flies both of them into the ground. On recovering from her injuries, Vina Ferguson moved back to the United States and initially removed herself from the airline business. After a number of years, she took up a job again with a Venezuelan-based airline and operated routes in South America. Vina went on to meet and marry a Captain Ron Heckman, a senior captain with TWA. The family moved to Rolling Hills in California. She moved to Rhode Island to be with her son and daughter in 2008, and at this juncture I managed to establish contact with her through TARPA, that's the TWA Retired Pilots Association. Like a beached whale, the wreck of the Star of Cairo remained on Inishmacnocton Island for many, many years. During the 1980s, land reclamation was taking place on the island to prevent tidal flooding. A hole was dug and the sad wreck of the once great airliner was bulldozed into that, and to this day she remains there. Way back in 2008, the 1946 crash of the TWA Star of Cairo was my first contact with this subject. That's been a long time ago, and this film on the Star of Cairo marks the end of my 5 documentary cycle. To say the very least, it has been a truly extraordinary process, and while I started looking at the crashes in a forensic manner, what has stood out are the personal stories of passengers and crew that were involved in these awful crashes. Can't help but mention the extraordinary help, courtesy and assistance I've had along the way. I truly have walked in the footsteps of giants, too many to mention. Some extraordinary people came into my orbit, and without them I could not have finished this process. So to everybody who has helped me, thank you very much. There will be one final audio-based documentary that will follow this TWA piece, and in it we try to capture voices that didn't make it onto the original documentaries. So once again, to everybody who has contributed, thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe and watch out for further documentaries in the future. Talk to you soon.